Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. On a crisp autumn evening in 1985, the small town of Maplewood was preparing for its annual fall festival. The air was filled with the scent of pumpkin spice and the distant laughter of children as they darted between wooden stalls. Vendors set up booths while neighbors exchanged polite greetings, all basking in the celebratory atmosphere. Yet beneath this picturesque facade, a darkness lingered just out of sight, ready to shatter the calm of rural life. It was late, and the sun dipped below the horizon, blanketing the streets in twilight. People began to drift away from the festival to return home, unaware of the impending tragedy that would alter the town's course forever. At the edge of Maplewood, just behind a crumbling barn, lay the body of Eleanor Perkins, a local high school art teacher, whose vibrant spirit had won the hearts of her students and community alike. Eleanor was found by a pair of teenagers out for a late-night stroll, innocently drawn away from the festival's revelry. At first glance, it seemed like a macabre Halloween prank. But as they approached, their laughter faded, replaced by a sickening dread. Eleanor, lifeless and cold against the damp earth, her once bright eyes now forever closed, created an instant rift in the town's fabric. As news of her death spread like wildfire across Maplewood, it left behind an indelible mark on its residents. No longer could they view their little town as a safe haven. Who had taken her life, and why? A question etched in their minds. It would drive them to hunt for answers that would uncover long-buried secrets and challenge the very essence of their close-knit community. The victim, Eleanor Perkins, was not just a teacher. She was a beacon of inspiration in the lives of her students. Born and raised in Maplewood, she embraced the quiet charm of her hometown, where everybody knew each other yet maintained a sense of distance, unbroken by the nuances of personal struggles. Eleanor, however, was an anomaly, with a passion for art that kindled creativity and nurtured young hearts. She held the position of art instructor at Maplewood High for nearly 10 years, forging relationships that transformed students' lives. Her classroom was alive with chaotic splashes of color, the joyous reverberations of laughter echoing off the walls. Students felt safe to express themselves, to let their dreams take form while smudging paint on their apron. She encouraged every student to explore their talents, making it her mission to draw out their potential, and many blossomed under her guidance. Known for her gentle demeanor and ready smile, Eleanor was a trusted confidant, often staying late to assist those struggling with both art and life. But behind the warm exterior lay a tangled web of unspoken fears and insecurities. Friends noted Eleanor's tendency to withdraw when discussing her personal life. There were murmurs of a recent breakup with a long-term boyfriend who had left suddenly weeks before her death. Some suggested she had spiraled into a quiet melancholy, yet those closest to her had witnessed her quiet resolve and her attempt to remain upbeat. During a mundane conversation just days before her tragic end, she remarked on attending the festival alone, dismissing it with a wave of her hand, as if it were nothing. Now, in the wake of her absence, that remark echoed painfully. A ghost of her once vibrant spirit. Who could harbor enough bitterness to extinguish such a light? As the investigation began to unfurl, her friends ventured to prioritize the search for truth, determined to honor her memory while grappling with their own grief. The crime scene. The cool night air carried an eerie silence as the first responders gathered at the crime scene, their breath visible against the dark backdrop, each puff a reminder of the life now extinguished. Time seemed to stand still as Deputy Marcus Hale stepped over the rusty threshold of the barn. The moonlight filtering through holes in the aged roof, illuminating the scene of despair. Eleanor lay sprawled in the damp earth, the remnants of the festival far removed from this grim reality. The grass beneath her was stained with crimsoner blood, a stark contrast to the browns and grays of the barn. For Deputy Hale, this was not just another case to solve. It was a personal affront to the town he loved. This was his neighbor, a friend in many ways, and the sight rattled him to his core. Nearby, the local coroner meticulously documented every detail. Eleanor's clothing lay askew, her signature green cardigan clinging to her shoulders, a single shoe missing from her foot, evidence of a struggle. Her face, though serene in death, bore a chill that spoke of the violence that had taken place. As the coroner gently lifted her, he noted subtle bruising on her neck, a clear indication of foul play. While processing the scene, Deputy Hale's eyes darted to the scattered autumn leaves. Among the foliage lay a small silver pendant, glinting softly in the moonlight. It was heart-shaped, adorned with intricate engravings, seemingly out of place amidst the chaos. He placed it in an evidence bag, sensing it could be a key to uncovering the identity of Eleanor's assailant. As the barn door swung on its hinges and the night deepened, the reality settled heavily on Hale's shoulders. No longer could this quaint little town view itself as untouched by darkness. The shadows that crept into the lives of its residents now blurred the line between safety and danger. And one question loomed larger than all others. Who could have committed such an atrocity against a beloved member of their community? The early investigation. As the first light of dawn crept over Maplewood, a chilling fog hung in the air, shrouding the town in a veil of uncertainty. By this time, the initial shock of Eleanor's murder had begun to fracture into anxiety and fear. The peaceful facade of the community was shattered, threatening to expose unspoken tensions hidden beneath the surface. Deputy Marcus Hale convened a meeting at the sheriff's office, where local law enforcement gathered, grim-faced and determined. "We need to act quickly," Hale stated, tapping the silver pendant on the desk where it caught the flickering overhead light. "This is not just a murder, it's a message." He could feel the weight of the case resting on him as the room fell silent, the gravity of their responsibility palpable. Detective Clara Ramos, known for her keen instincts, stepped forward, reminding them of the festival and the many attendees who had been around the area. "We should start there. Talk to everyone who might have seen her the night before," she suggested. "Friends, acquaintance, everyone. There's bound to be someone who noticed something unusual." The team segmented into groups, each assigned a specific task. Hale and Ramos took to the streets, visiting Eleanor's close friends and co-workers, probing for insights about her recent behavior and relationship. Although her friends painted a picture of a compassionate soul devoted to her students, they hesitated to speak of her recent breakup, an obvious source of discomfort. As they moved through the tight-knit neighborhood, whispers of Eleanor's tragic fate floated along the sidewalks. Some neighbors had already formulated their own theories, speculating wildly about enemies and jealous histories that often lacked any evidence. Tales spun from the threads of fear and suspense. An early lead emerged as they interviewed a student named Jesse, who had a complicated relationship with the victim. Bright but troubled, Jesse had fallen behind in his classes and had often relied on Eleanor for encouragement. He mentioned seeing her speaking to a mysterious figure that evening, a tall man he didn't recognize in the crowd. He glanced over his shoulder as he spoke, fearful that the shadows of the past might indeed come calling for him. With this new lead, and the weight of the growing case upon them, Hale and Ramos knew they were racing against time. Each day brought a sense of mounting urgency. The community's trust was waning, and with each passing hour, more questions piled onto the once innocent town of Maplewood. The dead ends. As the first week passed, the initial momentum of the investigation began to dwindle. Deputy Hale and Detective Ramos found themselves walking into an intricate web of promises and lies, each thread leading them in circles. With every person they interviewed, it seemed their understanding of Eleanor's life became murkier rather than clearer. Jesse, the student who had seen the mysterious figure, was interviewed multiple times, but each recounting only offered vague descriptions and uncertain memories. The tall man had become an elusive phantom, indistinguishable from the crowd of the festival attendees. Meanwhile, other leads appeared promising before evaporating like morning fog as they spoke to friends, family, and acquaintances, all echoing the same sentiment. Eleanor was kind. She didn't have enemies. Deep down, as Hale sifted through the tepid words of those around him, he couldn't shake the mounting frustration. The town was reluctant to confront any unpalatable truths. Perhaps it was the festering wounds from a decades-old rivalry between families, or rivalries that had sprouted from petty grievances over petty things. As they explored deeper into Eleanor's connections, it seemed everyone had something to hide. Attempting to shake off the malaise of stagnation, Hale and Ramos turned their focus to investigating the recently broken relationship, hoping it might pry open the hearts of the reticent. They found themselves at the modest home of Eleanor's ex-boyfriend, Matt, a police officer who had mysteriously moved away just weeks before Eleanor's death. Matt was cautious but cordial. He spoke of their relationship, citing irreconcilable differences, but his hesitance ignited suspicions of unresolved feelings, or even latent anger. When asked about his whereabouts that night, Matt provided an alibi friend's house across town, but his tight-lipped nature made it difficult to discern truth from evasion. Return visits to Emily, Eleanor's closest friend, revealed further complications. As they pressed her on Eleanor's social life, she revealed a tight circle of friends, but avoided bringing up the night of the festival. With evasions that barely passed as excuses, Emily's demeanor shifted. She recoiled from direct questions, as if fearing exposure. After 6 days of chasing leads that led nowhere, the team reconvened at the sheriff's office, weary from the lack of tangible progress. Their once hopeful mission felt like aimless wandering in the dark, the oppressive weight of uncertainty hanging heavier than before. The community's patience was fraying, and Hale could sense the dread beneath the surface, the fear that they might never catch Eleanor's killer. A break in the case. Just as frustration threatened to suffocate the investigation, a flicker of hope emerged from an unlikely source. On a brisk Friday morning, a sudden call came into the sheriff's office from a local bar, the Rusty Nail, where a bartender had overheard a conversation the previous night that piqued her interest. Deputy Hale and Detective Ramos arrived at the dimly lit establishment, the aroma of stale beer and wood smoke filling the air. The bartender, An unassuming woman named Linda leaned against the bar as she recalled the memory. "I was cleaning up," she said, "when I heard two guys talking about a girl they knew." Her eyes glinted with the thrill of involvement. One of them mentioned Eleanor. The mention of Eleanor's name felt like a town on the verge of uncovering a new layer of its hidden realities. Hale and Ramos leaned closer, encouraging her to share everything she could remember. It wasn't nice. They were saying something about her being a bad influence, like she caused trouble. Linda continued, glancing around the bar as if afraid someone might overhear. One of them was clearly angry, like they were talking about a grudge. "What did they look like?" Ramos pressed, urgency bubbling beneath her calm facade. Linda described two men in their early 30s, one tattooed and loud, while the other appeared more reserved, giving off an air of menace. As she spoke, an alarm bell rang in Hale's mind. They fit the vague profiles of some of the local troublemakers he had encountered in past incidents nearby. He jotted down their descriptions as Linda relayed the details, her voice growing louder with confidence. After leaving the Rusty Nail, the two detectives conducted a quick background check on the men Linda described. When they returned to the station later, the pieces began to fit. One of the men, a troublemaker named Kyle, had a prior record for assault, a crime that had never been more than a few blocks from Eleanor's neighborhood. With new determination coursing through them, Hale and Ramos initiated a stakeout, believing that meeting these men could lead them closer to unraveling the enigma of the night of Eleanor's death. As they watched and waited, the anticipation grew palpable. Here, they were on the brink of potentially unearthing the truth that had eluded them for so long. In a town that had been shrouded in shadow, this break in the case felt like a beacon of light piercing through the fog. They prepared to confront the darkness that had kept Eleanor from finding the peace she deserved. The suspect. Under the veil of twilight, Deputy Hale and Detective Ramos parked their cruiser a few blocks from the bar, hiding in the shadows as they kept watch on the street corner where Kyle and his companion were known to frequent. The rhythmic sounds of a nearby train echoed through the night, a reminder of the ticking clock pressing down on them. As minutes turned into hours, tension ran thick in the air. Barely visible in the streetlights, Hale took note of their environment. The whispers of autumn leaves swirling around the pavement, the distant laughter from a cluster of festival-goers who had yet to return to their homes. Yet here, in this dark alley, a contrasting atmosphere brewed on of potential danger and the weight of what lay ahead. Finally, around 10 p.m., Kyle and his companion, a scruffy-faced man named Tony, meandered into view. Their appearance was disheveled, edged with the reckless abandon of youth barely tempered by adulthood. Hale gestured toward Ramos, silently urging her to ready the approach. Pushing down the unease swelling in their chests, they stepped from the shadows as the two men paused mid-conversation, recognizing they were no longer alone. "Evening, gentlemen." Hale's voice was steady, masking the urgency that threatened to burst forth. Kyle's eyes darted between the deputies and his companion before settling on the taller figure. He was known around town, mostly for his bravado and antagonistic nature, a man whose presence sparked unease. "What do you want?" he muttered, the bravado fading as he crossed his arms defensively. Ramos stepped forward. "We have questions about Eleanor Perkins' murder." The name hung in the air like a dark omen. Kyle's response was a strangled laugh, but there was no humor in his eyes. "You think I had anything to do with that?" He tried to feign ignorance, shifting nervously. Hale locked eyes with him. steadfast. "We have reason to believe you had an altercation with her before she died. We need you to tell us what happened." Kyle shifted uncomfortably. The bravado began to crumble. "I barely knew her. She was just a teacher. A stuck-up one at that. Didn't like my drawings." The words dripped with disdain, but there was something else lurking beneath the surface, a spark of fear that flickered in his gaze. Ramos pressed further, challenging him with a hard fact. "You said she was a bad influence. What did you mean by that?" As tensions grew tangible, Kyle's mask of indifference slipped. The once arrogant young man suddenly seemed vulnerable under the weight of a grave accusation. "Yeah? Who cared?" She knew what she was getting into. "Hanging around me and Tony," he spat, his bravado momentarily replaced by anger. In that moment, whether he realized it or not, he had offered them a glimpse into the resentment he held. Each word felt like a linchpin to the investigation, exposing a connection between his life and Eleanor's that could not be ignored. As Hale reached for his notepad, an overwhelming sense of certainty surged within him. This was the opening they had sought. Within the cracks of Kyle's bravado lay the secrets of that night, waiting to spill forth. The trial. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with the tension of raw emotions. Family and friends of Eleanor Perkins filled the seats, their faces a mixture of hope and despair. The small town of Maplewood watched closely, eager to bear witness as justice was served for the woman whose life had been stolen under the cover of darkness. At the front of the room, the imposing figure of Kyle Anderson sat, his once bravado replaced by a pallid expression of anxiety. He faced a jury of his peers, while Deputy Hale, having worked tirelessly on the case, took a seat on the prosecution's side, his heart poundingly aware of the stakes at hand. He wanted only to provide closure at the resolution that so many needed. Beneath the stern gaze of the judge, the trial opened with the prosecution presenting its case. Evidence painted a chilling picture. Bruises found on Eleanor's neck, the bloody scene in the barn, and the incriminating conversation overheard at the Rusty Nail. Detective Ramos took the stand, elucidating the details of Kyle's character and his prior run-ins with the law. As she spoke, the courtroom absorbed her words, hanging on the chilling implications of a woman's life snuffed out too soon. But Kyle's defense team was sharp and strategic. They leaned on doubt, questioning the seemingly flimsy connections. "How do we know this was anything more than a tragic accident?" The defense lawyers oozed confidence. "We cannot convict a man based on hearsay and circumstantial evidence alone. Surely, a man's life hangs in the balance here." The emotional testimonies of Eleanor's friends painted her as a vibrant spirit. Emily, her best friend, recounted their shared dream-siege memory, a reminder of the life that had been prematurely extinguished. But then came the defining moment when Kyle took the stand, the sharp contrast of his vulnerability against the resolve of those who sought justice. As he spoke, he presented a different narrativia story of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. He painted a tale of misunderstanding and deflection, asserting that Eleanor had been involved with unsavory characters, and that perhaps it was one of them who had committed the crime. In the end, it was the emotion of the courtroom that reigned supreme as Deputy Hale delivered the closing arguments. invoking memories of Eleanor's impact on the community. Her kindness and the passion she poured into teaching. She deserved better than this, Hale declared, fighting back his own burgeoning emotions. She deserves justice. The jury deliberated for hours, each tick of the clock echoing painfully against the courtroom walls. Finally, with breath held tight in their collective chests, they returned a mixture of apprehension and resolve written across their faces. The foreman nodded solemnly. "We find the defendant, Kyle Anderson, guilty of second-degree murder." A wave of relief and mourning washed over the court, tears streaming down the cheeks of Eleanor's supporters. While the victory felt bittersweet, it was a step toward healing, a tempered acknowledgement that while life would never return to what it once was, justice had found its way in the end. As Kyle was led away in handcuffs, the community of Maplewood slowly began to exhale, starting the long road to healing together. Beneath the weight of grief, they would carry Eleanor's memory forward, honoring her legacy in ways that were yet to be realized. The aftermath. In the weeks following the trial, Maplewood began to settle into a new, uncertain rhythm. The town, once vibrant with the unfettered joy of community life, now bore the heavy marks of tragedy and reflection. Beneath the bleached sky, an uneasy calm settled over the townspeople, each grappling with the reality that their world had irrevocably changed. Eleanor's absence echoed through the halls of Maplewood High. Desks remained untouched in her art classroom, a stark reminder of the passion she had nurtured in generations of students. The principal announced a memorial art exhibit in her honor, inviting students to contribute works reflecting their grief, their hope, and their memories of her. As word spread, anticipation mingled with reflection already. The hallways buzzed with the energy of potential, of life pushing through the cracks of grief. Hale found himself drawn back to the classroom, sitting at a desk in the corner where he would often see Eleanor. That room, once a haven of color, felt stark in its silence. Posters hung undisturbed, catching the light of the setting sun. He remembered her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when discussing art with her students. The ache of loss was omnipresent. It pressed on his chest like a weight. Meanwhile, Detective Ramos delved into community outreach, organizing support groups to help those affected by Eleanor's murder process their emotions. The town now faced a delicate task of healing, and Ramos was determined to be a guiding light. Over time, the groups turned into a space for collective catharsis, where shared stories illuminated individual experiences. Tears were shed, but laughter too began to weave its way through the narratives, strengthening the bonds of the community. Those first few months were fraught with communal growing pains. Some struggled to let go of anger, still haunted by the specter of evil that had slipped through their doors. Others chose to turn their energy towards positive change, forming alliances that bridged gaps between neighbors who had once kept their lives private. Kyle's conviction reverberated beyond the courtroom. It sparked necessary discussions around accountability and the importance of addressing toxic behaviors in families and friendships. With time, people began to open up about their hidden battles. Those stories became threads in the new fabric of the community built on trust, appreciation, and understanding. As autumn faded into winter, a poignant reminder of Eleanor's impact emerged the art exhibit showcasing student works open to the public. Each piece was a celebration of creativity born from sorrow, a reflection of shared memories. In the center of the exhibit, a mural painted by Eleanor's students depicted her surrounded by vibrant colors, her signature green cardigan flowing like a river of joy through the canvas. As the townsfolk filed through the exhibit, they paused to soak in the radiant spirit of the woman they still mourned, a symbol of the strength found in unity and love amidst tragedy. And even as the sun dipped below the horizon, hinting at a future unknown, there was a palpable dance of hope nestled within the heavy hearts of the residents of Maplewood. Resilience thrived in that community. They would find their way forward together, holding dear the light that Eleanor had shared with them all. Reflection. As the snows of winter melted into the budding warmth of spring, the town of Maplewood emerged from its cocoon of grief, transformed by tragedy into something new, a testament to resilience and regeneration. Each morning, the sun glimmered through the branches of newly blossomed trees, and the quiet streets began to hum with renewed life. In the months following the trial, the community embraced the changes inspired by Eleanor Perkins' legacy. The arts program at Maplewood High School expanded, with students participating in workshops that welcomed local artists. The hallways, once heavy with unspoken sorrow, were now dotted with bright murals and sculptures, each one echoing Eleanor's passion for creativity. Students who had struggled academically found solace in their art as mentors emerged from the shadows of loss, turning their grief into advocacy. Hale frequently visited the school, often mentoring students in a makeshift after-school program. The laughter and joy that filled the room brought a bittersweet comfort, reminding him of everything Eleanor stood for. He found himself inspired as the youth flourished, a living tribute to the teacher who had poured her heart into their education. Yet, quiet moments of reflection often tugged at his heart, moments when he considered the balance of life and death, love and loss. In late evening walks, he felt traces of Eleanor's spirit in the breeze that rustled the leaves and the laughter of children playing outside. With every step, he reminded himself these were the echoes of a life well lived, one that would endure even in absence. As the community stood united, no longer burdened by fear, they began to reclaim their narrative, a shared journey through darkness that now glimmered with the light of hope. Though they could never forget what had transpired, they managed to emerge more alive, more connected, and forever cognizant of the fragility of both life and love.